I'm Kat Facchini, and I haven't led my own broadcast yet.
So we're going to get into hot takes. Hot takes, usually we relate it to film industry, but honestly it could be just any kind of entertainment media that you have.
Cool.
If you have something, you can share it.
What is that? Like an opinion?
Yeah, like literally any hot take that you have about the industry.
I was like, are you going to ask me?
No, we want your hot take.
The more people that disagree with it, the better.
A big hot take, like on the spot. We want your...
Okay. I have one that is a really big one for me.
Okay.
Sitting in the front of the movie theater is the best place to sit. Like front row.
Wow.
You did tell me this, and I did have...
I am addicted to sitting in the front row.
And that is crazy.
Yeah. But you have to be front center, right? There's no way on the side.
It's ideal. I have been front side. It also depends on the movie theater. The place I normally go in Brooklyn, New York, is like the front row is still pretty far back. But I just like it. It's like being front row at a show, but it's a movie. I don't know. It's fun. I do think it's crazy. I get that some people don't like it, but I'm like, I recommend trying it a few times.
That is good.
Do you not get neck pain? Like, what if it's a 2-hour movie and you're literally like...
Well, all these theaters have reclining seats now anyway, so you're already laying down, you know? I don't know. I like being up toward the front. My friends and I will be like picking movie seats, and they're like, okay, I have A4. I'm like, okay, cool. We're in the front. Perfect. It's fun. I don't know. That's a hot take that I have. I'm trying to think of other ones that I have.
That's wild. I
mean, that's a pretty hot one.
You like go out of your way to reserve the front row.
But you don't even have to reserve it.
No.
It's always
open.
That's the thing is you can also like kind of count on getting a ticket most of the time.
I watched La La Land top right, and I saw about a hand width of screen because it was so far on the side.
God.
Yeah.
I have no idea what happened to that movie.
That could be hard. I mean, I do think it depends on the theater, and there are some where you definitely can't be front row, but a lot of times it's either that or like if there's a balcony, I'm sitting in the balcony of the theater for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'm treating this like it's a concert now. And it's just a movie.
Your little glasses.
Yeah, I have binoculars on. Exactly.
Yeah, well, I went to see Deadpool last week, and I did notice that the front row seats were like very farther than I remembered them being.
I think they're trying to make them more usable.
Yeah, I remember like back in Harry Potter, like Prisoner of Azkaban or something, like I definitely had a front row seat. My parents got it like last second tickets, and I was literally it felt like Clockwork Orange-esque of just taking it all in. But I think they are changing it up.
Yeah.
Or cheaper, you know, half price.
But if you get A-list, then it's all the same. You're just choosing to be there.
You and your bougie A-list.
It's
programs.
so affordable.
I'm an Alamo Drafthouse member, so I can't say anything.
Okay.
It's like such a good deal. I can't turn it up. But
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
Sam, do you have anything?
Trying to think. My hot take? Okay, as someone that I guess also Deadpool and Wolverine, like even though I'm on the outs of like those like Easter eggs and stuff like that, I'm a fan. I'm a fan of exclusionist behavior like that, where I'm like, you earned it. Like, I get it. Like, I think if for like a franchises like that, where I'm like, bringing back a character like Wolverine, it's like it is a treat for the fans that have been it for the long haul. I feel like a lot of people nowadays probably are like, it is not accessible to like a wider audience. And like, yes, they do cater to the wider audience, but I'm also kind of like, and as that person that is in that bucket of the wider audience that doesn't know the secrets, I'm a fan of the secrets.
Wait, what are the secrets? Wait,
Just
what?
like the Easter, or just like not the secrets,
Like the
but like the
inside jokes?
inside jokes.
Oh,
Yeah, where
I
I'm
see.
kind of like,
It was like watching a movie in a foreign language to me. I was like, I don't know what's going
yeah,
on.
like, and like I think going into that, like I recognize that that's what I'm entering, but that's my fault. I didn't watch the other stuff. I mean, yes, there's an argument to be made that like I don't need to watch that to enjoy this. Like I think like they had callbacks to the Loki like series. I didn't watch a lick of that. So like I didn't understand any of that. Mm-hmm. There were characters that I definitely turned to my friend was like, who is that? But I, at the end of the day, I'm like, I didn't do it. I didn't.
Yeah.
It's on you.
It's on me.
You should have watched more content.
Exactly. A fool. Me. I get it. Because I feel like if I was a creator in that space, like writing those kind of jokes, I think would be like fun. I get it.
Yeah.
It's just like that to me would be like, so all to say is, I don't mind. You can have your little bits. I don't mind.
It's always when somebody walks in and the whole theater claps, and I'm like, okay, like
Yeah.
some random dude.
It's like I'll just check out a Variety article after that.
Yeah, I'll catch up.
I'll catch up later. Don't worry about me. I'm here for the good time. Just you guys go.
Yannick's most recent case of that is we went to see the Cake concert. Do you all know Cake?
Like
the like
the Jonas
90s,
Brothers-
2000 band.
Oh yes. Going the distance.
I'm going the distance.
Yeah, I know that song.
One of their songs is that like that sheep go to heaven, goats go to hell, and Yannick not being familiar with Cake, and everyone in the crowd being obsessed with like loving this song, and everyone's like sheep go to heaven, like the whole crowd singing.
The context is we had the band before is this like a folk band from the Ukraine, and they had this really powerful message about defending their homeland and spreading that, and all they have like some really like powerful vocals, Ukrainian stories, and this like somber atmosphere is really serious and deep, and I love that band. But then right afterwards, like a couple songs later, the whole audience was like sheep go to heaven, and it was just kind of quite the transition.
Definitely, yeah. It wasn't. I mean, I loved both of the bands, but they didn't pair well together.
Yeah. My hot take pertains particularly to like film production gig work, and it's the old adage that unpaid jobs only lead to more unpaid jobs, which I don't think is true, and that's my hot take. I think I mean you can make an argument for that it doesn't, but I think that in my personal experience, it has always kind of indirectly led to paid work, but also I feel like that's an unpaid small project is an opportunity to leverage that favor that you're doing to make sure that you're getting something out of it that isn't monetary, like a connection, or if the guy that you're doing a favor for has a piece of gear or something that you need. I think it's just an opportunity to do that, and to say that it doesn't lead to anything is just kind of short-sighted. I mean, that just means an entire segment of the indie world just wouldn't exist if there aren't startup projects that you're willing to invest in with your time. So my hot take is to write those off as not that they shouldn't exist is bullshit.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, a lot of this stuff wouldn't exist.
Yeah.
If we didn't have it. A lot of this, what we're doing right now, wouldn't exist.
Yeah, this is an unpaid job for you guys, right?
Yeah.
It's unpaid for you.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it's what keeps the world together, and we do it because we love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's very niche to my experience.
Though. No, yeah. I actually had a meeting for an unpaid job today that I would keep my current job while I had it, and it was like, well, yeah, I mean, like, this is something I'll never get to do paid until I'm experienced enough, and I get to do it. I'm doing it for free, but now I have that experience, and it would be helpful. But I was like, I need to be able to do my regular job while I do it, just so I can pay rent. But
and I feel like you can bring that up. Like, I'm happy to do this, but I need a little bit of flexibility.
Exactly.
There's you can negotiate. You're in a position to negotiate.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely take an unpaid job as like, what do I want out of this? And I'm just going to, I'm very selfish when it comes to when I'm working.
Yeah, you should be.
Yeah.
But I guess that is a form of payment in itself.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I wish everybody would just get paid all the time, not to say, but anyway. This is in response to like one comment online that was like, these shouldn't exist. And I was like, anyway. Hey.
Well, sadly, I'm bringing it back to Marvel, and I was trying to think of a hot take today, and I just couldn't. I'm bad at these. I can't do them. I just rant for something that doesn't make sense. But this one is the whole big bombshell of a news that Robert Downey Jr. is coming back as Doom, Doctor Doom, which everyone's speculating how he's going to come back, and I honestly think it's totally fine that he's coming back because I don't really think the movies are doing anything anyways. And I know he's only coming back because it's like Disney sees it as like Robert Downey Jr. made successful movies, so if we bring him back, then it makes successful movies, and that's not gonna be the case. But like, I just like him as an actor.
Yeah. Wait, so he's not to dive into this, but he's like not the same character. He's like a new character,
completely different character.
Okay.
He's a bad guy now too.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
See, but the thing, I guess, like my argument to that is like, yeah, it's fine, I guess, but also I'm like, what, you can get literally any other actor.
I know, but like honestly, like I like him, and the movies have been kind of garbage. So it's like, yeah,
Maybe they
I'll see him
actually
again.
couldn't find anybody else. Like, they're like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the defense was that like, well, also because the Jonathan Majors of it all. So like he was Kang, and like they had to rework their entire second or whatever phase that they're in. Because they had those movies in place, but because of all the Jonathan Major stuff, they had to scrap all of that.
Oh, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, and so then that, I think, like, I don't actually.
Who do people like?
Yeah,
What do people like?
I guess, but also like that, and that's why they're bringing all these people back, is what I've heard. I didn't actually, I don't know, but like I also heard that they are like justifying it because like Dr. Doom only wears a mask the entire time. You don't see his face at all, so it'd just be really
so
like
it could
his
just
voice.
be-
So you don't actually see his face, because I think like the whole thing of like they were so adamant about like being like, especially this last Deadpool Wolverine thing, where they were like really adamant about not the actor. An actor cannot play the same or different characters within the zeitgeist that is that Marvel, I guess, world, because they quite literally made jokes about that in
Yeah.
this past movie, especially with like Chris Evans. So I'm like, okay, you just did that. Now you're bringing back this guy. So I feel like it only makes sense if you just don't show his face.
Yeah. Okay.
Does it have to make sense? They,
mean, no.
They fly. They're
No.
superheroes.
No, it
a good point.
doesn't.
No,
Then
it
your
doesn't.
disbelief.
But I know, but they created the rules. So
And the argument of like, I mean, just anybody else. There's so many good, talented actors out there.
True.
It's such an expensive face that you're just going to cover.
Yeah, no,
If
exactly.
you're not going to see his face,
True.
why are you paying $150
Right.
No,
million?
Right.
that's it. Because
Because they can.
I guess, yeah.
he equals successful movie is the equation in Disney's mind.
Well,
But
apparently,
yeah.
like the Oppenheimer, like also thing, he was literally like, "Thank God this is not Marvel." Like, I'm so grateful.
A man
was the
goes back
icon.
on his word.
Not,
Oh
yeah,
my
true,
God.
so true.
Shocking.
Actually, you're right. You're right. Actually, point proven.
yeah. Okay.
Well,
Cool.
Now I know where you all stand. So good to know.
I have no idea what's going on. So.
Chief, go to heaven.
Yeah,
This is Haven't Made It Yet.
that's right.
an Indie Not podcast.
Yeah.
An audio format
And
video format.
Sometimes, depending how
Where you're watching it.
Like
Yeah.
introducing the idea of podcasts. Like,
My name is Hayden Garrett.
I'm Yannick,
I'm Sam.
I'm Kat Facchini.
and today we're going to talk about journalism and many other things.
All the things that Kat does. Kat and I are longtime friends, the second grade. Grew up
Childhood
together.
friends.
Absolutely. And I've known Kat to be one of my friends that has always been interested in like film and entertainment since a very young age. But funny enough, I feel like your career didn't really start that way, which I always thought was interesting as we've like grown up.
Yeah.
I feel like I fell more into like the whole theater, then fell into the whole screen loving thing. I know you've always loved theater. That's one of the things that we always bonded over, but I
Yeah.
feel like I always pictured you as the film girl.
Yeah.
So what was your path, I guess, like jumping off of that? Give us a little rundown of what that beginning of your career is like.
Yeah. I was kind of a denier in college of like working in entertainment. I went to a school where you make your own major. Really weird. And I went to NYU, so there was always an option to do film and do things like that. But I just felt like I wanted to do something different. And I was always really interested in politics. So I pursued environmental politics as my major and focused on that. I graduated and started teaching at nonprofits that focused on environmentalism in New York. And it was great and really interesting. But it was not super fulfilling and a real struggle financially and finding upward mobility. And I at NYU was friends with a lot of people who worked in film and worked on a lot of I was always kind of helping. I was always in the back. I was like a line producer or something like that. But a friend of mine from orientation, like we led orientation groups together, did the page program, and I was just applying to jobs, and I was like, I'll throw my name in the hat for that too, I guess. And he was like, oh, you'd be perfect because you're so random. I was like, okay, cool, I guess. I don't know. And it worked out. And I knew that if I wanted to go into working in a big entertainment conglomerate, I was going to want to focus on news, because working in environmental policy, I'm already focusing on news and politics a lot. So that's where my knowledge existed. And then I went through the page program doing news assignments. Basically, I covered the 2020 election. I worked at the Today Show. I worked at CNBC, and graduated and got a really shitty overnight gig at MSNBC, which is where I work now. And it's our cable news broadcast that mostly focuses on political news. Did that for a few months, then got a job on the day side, which is like the daytime shows, as an anchor producer. So I worked with an anchor specifically. I was like her assistant, her producer, traveled with her, did a bunch of things with her. And just last year I started as a writing producer, where I basically write segments for the show. It was a real like career change kind of happening right after college. I did a few years of what I majored in and was like, okay, something different, I guess. And now I still do that now, and it's been really interesting and a real whirlwind.
Okay, so you kind of threw your name in to the NBC page program, just kind of like on a whim.
Yeah.
You were like, sure, why not?
Yeah.
So what was that whole process? Because I feel like going into, I went to like TV school, I guess, but like that's one of the things that you apply to, and you're like, oh my God, it is so hard. That is like a dream opportunity. Like everyone's vying for it. They talk about how exclusive it is.
Yeah.
Could you walk us through the process of like, especially you who wasn't actively in entertainment at that time, trying to get into something so prestige like that? What was the actual like application process, like vetting, like that whole situation?
Yeah. So you apply online, you write an essay, I think, of some kind. And then you have one of those weird, scary interviews where they like you like are on a Zoom camera and they ask you a question. You have like 90 seconds to answer it on camera, which is always scary. I don't know if you guys have ever done those. And then you do a panel interview. And I think I did have a referral because my friend worked there, which I feel like helped get my resume seen. But I kind of feel like the rest of the process was up to me. And they do ask a lot about your experience. And I think what I was doing was something a little bit different than other people, which was taking the experiences that I had and seeing how I could transfer them over to entertainment roles. And at my panel interview, that was a real like wake up moment for me, that everyone that was with me all were PAs or producers, or like some of them already worked at NBC and former interns, and all their answers sounded really similar. And I felt like I stood out in that situation because I was like, well, when I was teaching a third grade class about the Hudson River, this is what the skills that I used. Or when I did a bunch of really weird odd jobs as an environmental advocate in New York. So I felt like I had a different set of experience. And once I got into the page program, there's a real slew of people, and I think they might have been changing how they recruit because they wanted people with like less experience or a different set of experience. I had a friend that worked in healthcare management beforehand. I had friends that were, PAs and producers and, studied film in school as well. But a lot of people just did random stuff and were switching into entertainment and interested in it. And I think that that's always my advice to NBC interns when they ask me for advice. I'm like, take those weird things that feel different, because it's done nothing but help me in my professional life, because I think it allowed, especially, in journalism, a lot of your life is talking to people who are outside of your bubble. And like, that's something that I did a lot at my previous jobs. And I think that it's always really helpful to do those things that feel a little bit random. I don't know. I feel like that was kind of the shift. I was like shifting into something new allowed me to like think and have a big perspective on like what I was doing beforehand and how it could transfer over.
Yeah, and I think it's very valuable to see how there's a lot of people that think like they put so much significance in this is what I want to do, and like this is going to affect years down the road.
Yeah.
What job I do now is going to affect what job I do in 10 years, and that's like not necessary. I mean, it is the case, but you can go do so many routes to get to the same place.
Totally. I mean, James Cameron was a truck driver, right? Before he made movies.
Yeah.
I'm just like that.
Yeah.
Totally.
You're breaking into the truck driving industry.
Yeah. I just think that it's never too late to do something different with your life, you know? And I think that also speaks to like coming out of the entertainment industry, you know, like you can always do something else. We have an anchor who left to become a sommelier recently. And I was like, her life must be amazing now. Like just drinking wine and not paying attention to what Donald Trump says. So I'm like, I need that in my late stage career.
Yeah, you have to drink wine and pay attention.
Yeah, that's usually what happens.
So I guess like staying within the NBC family. So as a page, you worked in the page. You were also doing it during COVID. So I'm guessing it's probably a different experience than what the actual like page program is.
Yeah,
generally.
I started like March 1st, 2020. So we had a few weeks and then they were like, all right, we're going to work from home for now. So that was weird. But they actually got productions up sooner rather than later. Like I was working on SNL by like September. But I didn't have to do a lot of tours of the building, which is the big page thing I feel like that people do is take everyone around, which I do now a lot for my friends and family when they come in. Yeah, it was really different. We were kind of guinea pigs in that process, but I lucked out a lot because I was really interested in news and those assignments didn't really change. They kind of actually grew. That was one of the only types of productions that stayed up and running because you have to report the news. Like that's still happening regardless. And they really adapted to working from home quickly. So I started at the Today Show website doing like weird commerce articles, picking out products and helping with, it was like an ad sales type of assignment. And then I went to a primetime show with Chris Hayes on like around the 2020 election. It was actually the week that Trump got COVID, if anyone remembers that. It was crazy. And I finished there like the week of January 6th. It was a real like hell on earth kind of vibe. Wow. And that was really cool, really fun. I was like, oh, I want to do this forever now, which is crazy because that's probably the least amount of sleep I've ever gotten in my life. And it's really stressful, but I mean, I'm sure you guys can relate to this. I feel like that kind of when you're on set for 12 hours, aren't you having so much fun, even though it is like really stressful and a lot of people wouldn't wish that on anyone, but it's really fun.
We're definitely crazy people.
Yeah, you have to have a little like something off. Yeah. I think
endorphins kick in after the long shift. You're like, oh my
God. Yeah. And I have the kind of job now working in daily news. Everything is breaking all the time. We're spending basically the whole day just playing catch up with events that happen. And so many days, our show airs at 3, it'll be 2:50 and somebody will do something. And we have to be like, okay, we have a new show now. We have a whole new thing of things to do. You're writing a script that's like going on the prompter 5 minutes after you finished it. And it's awesome. I mean, I think that sounds really stressful to a lot of people. And a lot of my friends are like, no, I work in development and I like just do emails all day. And I'm like, I haven't emailed anybody in years, honestly. So it's really fun. And I think it's just it's adrenaline inducing. It is like a drug, I think, in many ways. But I also feel like I walk out of my office every day pretty proud and also smarter, hopefully a little smarter. And I think, I don't know, it helps to just be aware of things. And everybody's kind of aware of the news, but I like that I'm getting paid to do it. So it's nice. But yeah.
How has it been in the last month being a part of this whole everything that's happening?
Yeah.
Just
oh my God, it's been crazy.
For context, for the mothers watching years later, in the last 3 weeks, we've had a attempt assassination on Trump. We've had, I guess a month ago, you could talk about the debate of like the
The debate was like
Joe and
a few
Trump
days
debate.
from a month ago. Yeah. Yeah, it's been crazy.
Joe dropping out
Yeah.
and Kamala Harris coming in.
JD Vance being picked.
Yeah, that's all been like
And
2
that's
3
just
weeks.
in the United States. Like there's so many other things that happen. There was a French election.
Yeah.
Like it is crazy. We're kind of prepared for it because we spent all of 2023 and all of like pre-2024 paying attention to stuff like this and being really like aware. And, you know, we have embeds and other reporter type people that have been like in these states the entire year talking to people. It's been really hectic. I've worked a few weekends that I'm not happy about. But it's interesting. The day that Trump was shot at, I was like out at a birthday party and drinking during the day. And I got a text from my boss and she's like, can you come in for overnight? You can get a hotel, a car, whatever you want, you know, like, come on, like, it's fine. Like, we're just looking for any hands. And I'm talking to my roommate about it. And I was like, I kind of want to go. And he was like, why would you go? What do you mean? And I'm like, why wouldn't I go? Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to be paying attention to this anyway. Of course I want to go. This isn't going to happen again, hopefully, knock on wood. But like, it's interesting when something historical happens that I have like a battle station to go to for that.
Yeah.
You know, that's really cool. On election nights, I always have a handful of friends that call me like Tuesday night and they're like, okay, so what's up? Like, who won? You know already, right? Like, you know all this. We're just, and I'm like, no, girl, I don't know anything. But it's like, I like that feeling of being turned to as well. And it's like, I think it's the thing that everyone's paying attention to anyway. So I think it's a really cool thing to be a part of. Yeah, it's been stressful, but I don't know. I think maybe it's just because I'm around a bunch of people also are really excited about it and we're all just feeling great. Like when my boss went to Milwaukee for the RNC and my coworker went, I was like, I'm not jealous. I really wish I didn't want to be in Milwaukee, to be honest. And she was like, no, me neither. But also it was really cool to be there. You know, It is just a really cool thing to witness. And it's a thing that you really remember for a long time. And I think about it a lot. And I'm like, I still remember 2020 so viscerally because it was like the only thing I was living and breathing for a few months. And that's really nice. But I don't know. I kind of do look at my coworkers who have been in the industry and been producing news for 20 years. And I'm like, are you guys okay? Like, how does this feel after doing it for that long? And you do kind of numb yourself and compartmentalize a lot of stuff as well. But
You have to, yeah.
yeah, but election stuff is really fun. I mean, we spend a lot of time like covering war and picking out what footage of like people being attacked and dying should go on our broadcast. And that is a lot harder and a lot more intense to deal with than, oh my God, like who's Kamala gonna pick? That is like, it's kind of fun. It's a little bit more sporty, I feel like, as well.
Or like gossipy almost.
Oh yeah.
You know?
There's a lot of gossiping.
Yeah.
We knew that Biden was dropping out. I feel like that sentiment existed in newsrooms a lot earlier than it did in the rest of the world, which was an interesting thing to see. We didn't know like confirmed, but we had our feelings kind of.
So what does your like day-to-day look like? I'm having a hard time visualizing it, being kind of an outsider of the news world.
So I start around like 7, 8-ish to get read in. That's kind of the phrasing we use for becoming aware of the news of the day. So that involves reading a lot of our internal reporting. We have people who work overnight and do reporting and write stories and also start producing morning shows because the shows air from, or at least my department airs from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. every day. So I start kind of just paying attention to like what's going on with everything. Around 9:30, we get something called a rundown, and that explains the stories that we're going to have in our show today and the guests that we're going to have to talk to them about different stories. So it'll be like, oh, today we're talking about, you know, the Trump campaign, and we're going to have so-and-so on, and so-and-so is going to write it. And that's where you get your assignments for the day. And as a writer, you're not required to pay attention to everything in the news. You're required to pay attention to kind of your story more so that day. But the next day you'll get a new story, so you kind of have to keep an eye on everything. So I'll get my assignment, and I'll kind of focus a little bit more of my research on that. And then we have a meeting where we really quickly talk over everything. We talk over, I would say like, oh yeah, I really like this video that somebody took and I really want to use it as an element. And I want to ask this question and yada, yada, yada.
So are you guys sourcing like every possible outlet, or do you guys have a couple go-to sources for like this comb over for the day?
Honestly, it's a pretty wide range. I try to focus a little bit on what NBC has already because that helps us know what we can officially report, what's reportable for us. There's a lot of legal rules about, if New York Times reports something but we don't have that same news from our sources, we can't necessarily say it without attributing. I try to really mix up where I'm looking. I have an email specifically for like newsletters. So I wake up in the morning, I read like 15 of those. I mean, I feel like I do try to, like, if it's local, that means I'd be looking for a lot of local papers and what they have as well, or local news stations have articles written as well. And we also have PAs who do research packets that we get to read as well. That was something that I did when I was a PA. But I mean, it's literally like the only thing we're doing for like an hour. We're really just reading stuff. So,
but you're not taking like firsthand that much. Like maybe there's something location based that pops up on TikTok or something. You're not doing that. You're looking at some stuff that's already been kind of published.
Yeah, kind of. I think it's more things like that. I mean, we have a lot of internal resources for things like TikTok and things like just internal. If, we have man on the street sound like somebody talking to a reporter, that's our internal communication that might not be published yet. We also read into that. We have a team focused around TikTok reporting and videos on TikTok because TikTok is full of misinformation and a lot of videos.
What?
Yeah, I know, right? So there'll be a lot of videos of like something happening. Exactly. And they have to confirm, like they have their own facets. I don't know how it works because I don't work there, but they figure out if a video is legitimate or not. And that also really helps like confirm and deny things. I do watch a lot of TikTok because I think it's important to know what's going on there. MSNBC has just started doing TikToks, which has been really interesting to watch. Like 60-year-old news anchors make TikToks. I'm like, okay, cool. Like we're trying. That's good. Our demo is all above like the regular demo that our ratings are based on because it's daytime news and old people watch MSNBC. I'm sure young people watch it on like I think they watch it clips of it, but the TV viewing is usually done by older people. But yeah, I wish I had more of a method to it, but I really don't. I kind of just like get on all the news I possibly can every morning.
Yeah.
But I think it seems like really crazy, but there's really only 5 or 6 things that everybody talks about all day on TV. If you watch hours and hours of it, you'll be like, whoa, this is all the same shit all day. Which is also really interesting. They call it editorial priorities of the day. They have that. Every news station I think has that as well. I think they're kind of all the same.
Okay, so in the morning you kind of catch up,
Yeah.
and then what happens next?
And then I start writing. So our scripts are very short, maybe 15 seconds. So you have to take a global conflict or, a huge sports story or a big political scandal and boil it down to if I was explaining it to my friend on the street, how would I say it? And you keep it really short, really concise. That's also when you would figure out what elements you want to use. So that would be videos, or if there's any sort of graphics or polls that people would talk to, that's going to be what's on the screen while the anchor is reading the script. That doesn't take too long, but a little bit later, the anchor will get into your scripts and start rewriting them to be more of their style. So you kind of work in collaboration with the anchor. I've worked with my anchor for a really long time, so I kind of know how she goes, but we try to match it as much as we can.
So you're assigned to one specific anchor.
Yeah, you work for one show. You have the option to pick up shifts for other shows. It's kind of like retail, actually, where if you're not there, somebody has to fill in for you. Things like that happen a lot. But I usually just stay on one show as much as I can. You also write the banners, which are the things that are at the bottom of the screen. Another fun thing that you can do if you're watching TV news all day is see how much things are misspelled in those banners, because they are misspelled all the time.
Wow.
Try really hard not to have them misspelled, but I do it a lot sometimes. And you also have to come up with the questions that are going to be asked to the person that you're speaking to, whether it be a reporter, a guest, someone who wrote a book. If you have someone who wrote a book, you usually have to like kind of speed read through the book a little bit to see what you want to pick out, decide if there's any types of videos that you would want to have. Like, say we have a SOT is sound on tape. That would be a little clip of, say there's a clip of Chuck Schumer saying something and I was talking to Byron Donalds, who's a representative, who's a Republican. I'd be like, oh, well, what do you have to say about, or like, what's your reaction to the statement that Chuck Schumer made about funding for Ukraine? And then you play it for them, and then they have something to say afterward. If it's a reporter, you email the reporter, you talk to them, you say, hey, here's what I'm going to talk to you about. Like, does that sound good? And they sometimes have edits for you as well. It's like very collaborative when it comes to the reporters, because they're like the anchors, like they have a relationship with you. The guests, they don't know anything beforehand, because then it's supposed to be very natural. And then it'll be like 1:00 before my show at 3, and something will happen and we'll have to do it differently usually. Wow. I mean, sometimes it is really like I have like a hit that I write and that's it, you know? And because I'm the writing AP and there are segment producers above me, there's kind of a like hierarchy, and I'm the baby. I get like the fun stories a lot of times. So a lot of Olympics hits this past couple weeks. Sports I get to do, business stuff, which is hard but interesting. But it's a whole range of things. And sometimes all of a sudden, like what you're writing about will become the top story of the day. So you have to be very prepared for that as well. But you kind of roll with the punches, really. It's like so many things can change. And then you walk out at 4 p.m. and you're like, don't really know what happened that hour. Like, and sometimes something will happen that'll like, that show will just be that story all day, you know, like that has happened quite a bit of times. I'm trying to think of one that happened recently. I feel like the Bob Menendez verdict kind of blew out our show a few weeks ago, because he was found guilty like 20 minutes before we started. Or actually, this happens a lot too. There'll be an event, Kamala Harris will be speaking, and we got to roll that. So goodbye show, which is a lot of, it's interesting. I think that like that whole like feeling of like unmade projects exists in newsrooms every day with stories that we've written, but it's okay. I don't feel that bad.
Do they ever come back, or do like, we'll save this for later in a time needed?
Yeah, definitely. We try to have some things that are evergreen, that are interesting. And everybody, I think people know this. I feel like this is not giving anything away, but like people that die, we have obituaries made for them already, like packages basically there. So we've had the Jimmy Carter one there for a while in our stuff. Obviously, I mean, he's been in hospice.
So anybody who's susceptible alrea's got a package.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of like celebrities, things like that. Not everybody, but a lot of people. They have those prepared ahead of time, which I think is so smart now that I think about it.
That's interesting.
But
it's kind of still a little like ominous, like if you're like right at that edge of like not that old yet,
I know,
but
I have
they're
like a
prepped.
list in my brain.
Yeah. No, and we've talked about it before. We're like, who dying would like blow up our show and who wouldn't, because there's sometimes people die and we like doesn't even happen. Like we don't even, not that we don't care, but it's just like, it doesn't necessarily like take over the show. The day that Tina Turner died, huge blowout of our coverage. Like goodbye any political news, we're talking about Tina Turner. And there's a lot of people that I think that would happen for, but I mean the Queen dying, that was like also another extremely insane month of work, because that happened for a month. Things like that really blow out the coverage. And I mean, I think it's great, because it means that all of a sudden you're like learning something completely new that day. And a lot of times that rolling coverage, it's a lot of work, and it's really hard to actually be producing it, because you're finding elements and trying to think of things to ask reporters when you just found out something and happened a few minutes ago. But it allows for you to kind of think really critically about things as they happen, and then not spend the whole day stewing on it instead. But yeah, it changes a lot. And a lot of stories do go away forever, and that's it. And it's kind of like goodbye.
I was going to say, I was like, I guess from the minute you get your assignment to actually writing it and pitching it, right? Like, I guess, like, essentially going on air.
Yeah.
That's really, what, like a matter of like 3 hours or so, really?
Yeah,
Like,
it's really condensed. Like, I think the hours are really easy. I'm kind of really just locked in for like 11 a.m. to 4, and then I'm done.
But I was gonna say, does it feel like a lot of pressure though? Like to like you, because you don't know what you're researching on, and so that also
Yeah.
comes into it, and then you have to edit that with your reporter or with your anchor.
Yeah,
within
I mean, I
that time.
think it's kind of it's a lot of pressure, but there's only so many things that could happen. Like, I don't know. I'm like, I feel like we've had a lot of curveballs thrown at us, and I've definitely had that happen to me. But the thing is, if you fail, you know, I'm not producing in a vacuum. There's 3 producers around me. There's, you know, people higher up. That's actually happened a lot where we'll have trouble getting a reporter for a breaking news story, and our department head is on the phone calling that reporter to be on our show. The thing that happens a lot with streaming actually has really changed how we do news, because reporters now have to report for our news show and also what we air on streaming, and also sometimes what we air on our special streaming platform or our special platform, which is when there's breaking news, they shut down channel 4 and we'll have it be news. And that's like a specific team that they just like sit around waiting for breaking news. I mean, they do a lot of other work, but they have a lot of different places that they need to be. And that's honestly more pressure on them. They're the ones on TV. I'm not on TV. So, and the pressure does sit on the anchor a lot too. I don't know. I think you kind of learn how to just let it wash over you. And I have gotten yelled at a lot. And I've also seen people get yelled at in crazy ways. But by the end of the day, it's like tomorrow's a new day. Like, there's a new show to produce.
For getting something wrong, or what
yeah,
is the
like getting
tension?
something wrong, not getting something together. I mean, the thing about sound on tape is a lot of times someone will say something to a reporter on Capitol Hill, and we'll get an email or get a notification about that they just said that, and we need to have, like, we want to know that. Or, you know, Joe Biden just addressed reporters outside of Air Force One. He did that at like 2:24, and our show's at 3, and we have to get that edited and turned around and all the elements around it right. You know, we have banners, things like that. I know, it's actually like, there's a lot of like, that's also happens when there are speeches and we have to be watching the speech. And we spend a lot of time watching things going on while we're working to see if we have sound that we want to turn, and they'll be late. They'll say something that's like, you think they're going to address something, but they don't. Things like that happen. So it's not getting things done in time, I guess, but the time limit is like very short. But again, it's cable news. Like, it's not the end of the world. At least that's how I feel. And I have to tell myself that if something goes wrong, I'm like, you know, it's okay. Like, it's not the end of the world. And I also, we're so uber focused. I'm sure you guys feel this way working on sets, where like, I'm going to notice everything that's wrong. I'm going to notice the misspelled banner. Sally in Wisconsin watching my show is like going to be like, that was great, you know? And we spend a lot of time having a full hour of stress, and then we'll get out and we'll have our little powwow after the show. And my EP will be like, you know, on air, that probably looked fine. So it's okay, you know? And it's just, you got to ask for help and like be okay with what happens.
I recently had the other day an incident where it was a total neurotic issue that nobody was ever going to notice, and I felt kind of bad about it, making a fuss about it. But it's kind of like, you know, you are being paid to be particular in this specific thing. So if you're being neurotic about it, you know, I feel like that's kind of why you're there. And then after it's done, you're like, okay, well, that was stupid, but you know, I was just being neurotic as prescribed. Yeah.
And people remember you like showing up for stuff and being really on top of things. And my show got an Emmy nomination, which is really exciting. And it was just for one live interview that we produced. That's like 3 minutes of time. And one person kind of produced it. We all work as a team to produce the show, but one person was assigned to that. And I'm kind of like the ripple effect of that on that, like that person's role in our show. And like, that is very memorable. And it's also, you never know when you are going to produce an Emmy winning interview or an Emmy nominated interview, because it could happen to anyone really, which is really cool as well.
Very broad question about news nowadays, but like 24/7 news, what is the pros and cons for the kind of all of that?
I think it's kind of bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting. I benefit from it a little bit, but I mean, I can speak to specifically that night that I went in for overnight coverage on the Trump assassination attempt. By 5 a.m., 4 a.m., probably, I was like, we aren't going to get any more news because everyone is literally asleep. Like, we're not getting any more developments, and it makes it harder to produce a show. I also think it's a mental health thing. Like, I try really hard to get out of my bubble and ask people who don't necessarily work in news, like, how they feel about it. And I feel like the general sentiment is it's too much. And that makes me sad because I feel like it only benefits people to be informed. But how helpful is it to be in this constant churn? You know, I don't think that makes anyone feel good. I know, especially with, you know, there being 2 wars while I've been working at this job, like, I do not like hearing about that and thinking about it all the time and sitting with it. And, you know, not even to think about the amount of violence that's happened in America while I've been there as well. I mean, that is like, it really weighs on you heavy. And I know it weighs on me. And I think about the people who aren't able to like compartmentalize it and they're thinking about it all the time. I think it's good for everyone to take a break. I think there are benefits to it in that there's been times when I think it's absolutely necessary. For example, the end of the Trump presidency, that last couple of weeks in December, there was news every hour of the day. He was doing something different truly every hour. And I think that even in the middle of the night, people kind of needed to be aware. And international conflicts, it's really helpful because there are quite literally things happening when we're not there. You know, I also did overnight coverage on Ukraine, and most of what happened there, we were asleep during, you know, or Americans were not necessarily, but they were asleep during it. So I think it's helpful for things like that, but it really takes a toll on you. And having that be your actual job where you're working overnight is messed up. Like, that is like really hard. And I have coworkers who do it and love it and are fine with it. I have a friend who gets up at 2 a.m. every day and starts working. And I'm like, literally, when I was doing it, I wanted to die. I was like, I can't do this. It's very hard. But like, someone has to.
Kind of bringing it to you, like, I mean, you kind of have to, whether you like it or not, deal with a 24/7 news. Like, it's always going to be in your mind.
Yeah, I think I've been a real advocate for others. And I think we spend a lot of time, me and my coworkers, advocating for ourselves to take breaks. We have vacation days. We need to use them. I'm using them right now. I think that's really important. And, you know, you can't see everything. You can't read everything. So giving yourself a little bit of grace in that way is also really important. But yeah, you're kind of in a little bit of you're in a real cycle. Some of the higher level positions in news, you do work the night before to prepare for the show. If I get promoted, I'm not looking forward to that, but it's a part of life. I mean, I have coworkers with families and I'm like, I don't know how you guys do this. And I also have a life, but, the thing that is cool is that you're assigned a show. And when the show's over, like, you're not going to be asked anything, like, nothing's gonna be asked of you necessarily. Like, I do leave at 4 and I'm gone, you know, like, they don't necessarily need me to do anything unless something crazy happens, but they have a lot of people for that as well. You know, you have to remember that there are other people working there and you don't always have to do that.
How do you relax at the end of the day? I mean, I know you said that you're done after 4, but like, I would never be able to like chill if there was like the chance to be called in work all the time. I mean, you can't be at a party drinking
not a surgeon, but like, yeah.
You know? Yeah,
I mean, I think that the things that you get called in for happen a little bit less often. That probably happens.
But just that uncertainty.
Yeah, it's definitely not great. And when I was an assistant, that happened a lot more because I was also focusing on like what the anchor needed, and sometimes she needed more. You just have to say no sometimes also. Like, I totally could have said no that Saturday, and I chose not to, but people say no. Like, that happens. You know, my friend was actually in California when it happened, and she was like, I'm not there. And even if I was doing this remotely, I wouldn't be that helpful. So like, I'm going to back out, you know? And, you know, I have a coworker who just took 9 months of maternity leave, and she was out. And, you know, she was like, anything that happened in those 9 months, like, it's going to take me a second to know about it because I was not paying attention. And setting those really strict boundaries with yourself is really important. Also, having friends that are not in news is a really big help, because I am hearing about things that I've never, like, I'm like, tell me about that, like, episode of TV that I wasn't watching, or tell me, keep me, like, tell me about something that's fun that's going on in the world that I don't have to pay attention to necessarily. Because it's good to just have people in your life that are not necessarily always thinking about it. And I think that that helps a lot as well. But yeah, I mean, there's pressure, but like, maybe I'm just a little bit used to it at this point, but I'm just like, it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's a big team. Like, there's a lot of people working there. So it doesn't always fall on me to be doing everything,
So I guess just pivoting also just now a little bit. So you obviously work for news outlets. It's like hard when you're talking about politics. Obviously, everyone has an opinion on everything nowadays, and they're not quiet about it.
Yeah.
I would love for you to like talk a little bit more about like one, like I guess working in that kind of environment, and I guess is the goal to be as objective as possible, or like how do you deal with other, I'm sure, like competing news outlets also that are probably in your peripherals that aren't like that? Like how do you,
like, and Fox News across the street from my office?
Sure. Or like even as you like maybe eventually want to leave this job, like into the landscape that is just working in news. Talking, maybe elaborate more about like what it's like working in that kind of space with objectivity, and then obviously with this huge
most news outlets do really try to have a separation between their hard news hours and their perspective programming. So that is kind of Rachel Maddow, like the really big NBC names that you might think of, like that have shows during primetime hours. They're like reading an op-ed in the newspaper is how I would compare them. Like, you're kind of being told all the news has happened in the day, and they're kind of telling you what they think about it, and maybe hopefully not influencing what you think, but just kind of trying to enlighten you to different perspectives. They're talking to a lot of experts, the analysts, things like that. And we're talking to reporters, they have a really different job in the idea of journalism, because that kind of journalism is really interesting, and it is not objective at all. It's subjective. The news itself that they're reporting on and talking about is objective, though, or hopefully is. I work in a space where we're trying to tell everyone just the facts, and you're not allowed to have an opinion. It's very hard. And, different things have happened that have, make it hard. And I do kind of believe that like objectivity in journalism is a really gray area at this point, because journalism itself has been questioned so much in the past 8 years that thinking that journalism is objective is a political opinion in itself. And like listening to journalists is, there are people who really think that like we're being told by Cesar Conde, who's in charge of NBC News Group, what to write in our scripts, or like Rashida Jones, who is the head of MSNBC, not that Rashida Jones, a different one. They think that that's who's telling us what to say on the news, which is crazy to me, but that's how people feel, and that's what people are reading on Reddit. And I think being aware of that is really important. And I really do try to stick to like, what do we know from the people that are there on the ground? And we're lucky to have people on the ground, so we have to listen to them. And I think it's also, I don't know, it's really challenging. And I think it's easy to be objective when you're only writing 15 seconds of a script, actually, I guess is probably part of it. But you have to be skeptical of yourself a lot and be like, am I injecting my personal opinion into this? And I've been in a couple situations where I know my political opinions are not the same as MSNBC in a lot of places. And, when we reported on the strikes, that was crazy because NBC was also unionizing at that point. So it was like a weird, like, we were like, whoa, we're writing about something that isn't like kind of, we're next to that. We're a breath away from that, really. And it's weird, and it feels a little touchy, and like, I don't know. It's still, I find it to kind of be one of those things that you're turning off and on a little bit. But we're saying our political opinions in the newsrooms all the time. Yeah. Of course we are, because it's important to know. And like, I have coworkers who are very left of MSNBC, and I have coworkers who are right of MSNBC, and it's interesting to hear from them. I have coworkers who have worked at Fox News. That happens all the time, which is crazy. But it is just a job for a lot of them, and a lot of them actually work in the part of the section of Fox News that is less, like, they're not working on Tucker Carlson, which he's not even on there anymore, but someone like that. They're working on the hard news part, which looks different to us, but like to them feels objective. It's like, that's the thing, is like feeling objective is kind of already making it subjective. It's a really weird gray area. And I didn't go to journalism school, so I feel like they kind of ironed that all out while they were at school, and I didn't necessarily have that.
What do you think? Do you think it's possible to be objective completely?
No, but I think it's possible to get as close to objectivity as possible. I think, and I think that it's not, I think it's feels impossible right now, but I don't think it's necessarily like always going to feel that way. I think we're just in a time where information has become a really powerful currency, and it's changed a lot. And I don't know, it's just weird. It's like, I think maybe it is possible, but I certainly try to do it. I strive for it, you know.
Is that like an ethos that's spread in particularly like maybe like your show from like top to bottom? Like that's an understood like message?
Yeah, I think every anchor has goals for their shows, and you know, the anchor that I work for is really like, let's stick to the facts, and we do that. And she is like, let's stick to the facts, but we can also, you know, being skeptical is part of being a journalist. You have to be questioning of things, and like sometimes you have to poke the bear of the side that you don't necessarily always like. She's gotten online flack before for being a little bit like, I don't think she's being forgiving of the right or forgiving of Donald Trump, but she's just questioning, you know, and that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to ask questions. Yeah. So I don't know. It's hard. It's like all of that's happening. You're focusing on the ethics of journalism, and you're also like, wait, but I'm making TV. So like, what's entertaining, you know? And that's also, that goes back to that 24-hour news cycle of like, okay, TV, like news is entertainment too. And that feels weird, but it is, you know, like it's important. So I don't know. It is a moral quandary that we live in all the time.
So there is like trying to say keywords or something to keep ratings up or something like of that sort.
I don't know if it's that necessarily. I think it's more just focusing on stories that people who watch our shows find important. Yeah. I think that's kind of a thing that's really important. We do kind of try to keep, like, there are moments where we have different things that happen. Like, again, the assassination attempt, like calling it that was like a thing that had to be worked out by legal standards to make sure it's all consistent and we're not all saying different things. Consistency of language is important just for more like reporting purposes. I don't know if it's really for ratings. I don't really know too much about the ratings aspect of our show. I know that like that's something that's kind of a more like senior level focused thing. Yeah. But we do get told things for like consistency.
Can you explain why that consistency is important?
Yeah, I think it's important because there is a brand that the network maintains and that they want it to feel like you're kind of everything, you're able to trust things because every anchor is a different hour, and there are people who are like, well, I like to watch so-and-so, but I don't like to watch this person and things like that. But if we try to keep our reporting consistent, then it feels like it flows better. And I think it's similar to if you were reading on a news site and you read two different articles, like you want them to feel like they came from the same place and they are using the same information typically, because you don't want to contradict anything that anyone said, because that really doesn't look good. And it also makes it really hard for people who are writing the next couple shows and working on that, because we do look at what other people are saying on the hours before our show to kind of be able to match and stay close to kind of the way that we're telling that story. It shifts in perspective a little bit because they're, you know, also injecting a little bit of like opinion into what they're working on. But yeah, it's just, I think it just makes it all a little bit cleaner and just helps kind of keep it all in one line. And I think that a lot of networks do that as well.
Do you think, this is a little bit of a popcorn question, but I guess I'm very interested in this like media landscape changing a little bit with this fact thing. Do you think that's like kind of made news better or change? I mean, it's obviously changed it, but do you think it's for the better or for the worse that there's this big questioning of what is news really?
I think it's important to be skeptical. Like, I think that that's a valuable thing, and practicing that is something that, you know, it's great. And a lot of places don't have a free market like news, you know, they get news from the state. I think I also think the news landscape is changing so much. And I think that the thing that is a real tool that we're losing a little bit because of that lack of objectivity or that feeling of questioning of it is like, if everybody is super media literate, it's fine, but that is not happening necessarily. Like media literacy is a thing that I think even I feel like I'm like, whoa, I have to question if I'm doing this right. And I think that, you know, I have so many friends that'll tell me they see something on TikTok or Twitter and I'm like, okay, where is that from? Like, look at that for a second and think critically about what you're seeing and hearing. And a lot of times you'll realize it's not necessarily true. Or there's, you know, I think that it's really hard to, when you're inundated with all this information and a lot of it is opinionated and there's no sourcing on anything, like it's really made me value the like legal process of journalism and the standards and guidance that we have. Having lawyers reading our scripts is really helpful because they're making sure that we're not gonna like smear anybody or say anything wrong, you know. But no, it's scary. It does really scare me a little bit because I feel like especially the younger generation, I think because there's just such a large amount of information and so much of it is untrue and we don't necessarily have the tools, like the mental tools to like vet things. It's like, I don't know.
What would be the mental tools? Like how does somebody navigate this absolute chaos? I'm constantly like, okay, well, there's a really loud voice saying this thing, but like I don't know. I guess Google for like 30 minutes.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I have friends who are from other countries and they feel like I have a friend from Ukraine and she's like, oh, well, I don't go to America to know the news about Ukraine, obviously. And I'm like, well, that makes me sad that I feel like we're failing on reporting that, you know, like,
rough to hear,
it is like how much can we possibly do? We're meant to cover every single global conflict and everything that's going on in our own election and our own this. It's like, it's a lot. And I think that most places struggle with that when they're really expanding things. But I do think it's like, it is the toolkit is hard. I do follow like some people who do writing about it. And I think that I wonder if like this is like a thing where they started putting economics into people's classes. Like, I mean, when I studied in school, we learned how to like vet a source, like vet I didn't use Wikipedia articles, you know, or like we're not supposed to. I think that should be applied to like how we read news too.
True, yeah.
But it's really hard to do it. And it's in the environment we are, maybe it takes more regulation of information as well. Like thinking about, you know, maybe not everybody can just post information online. Maybe there's consequences for that, for lying. And there are legal consequences for it, but maybe there needs to be more consequences. I don't know. It's a big problem. It is a big thing and it's scary. I have a couple of friends that work kind of on the disinformation beat, and the way that anything that happens, it germinates weird fake stories and conspiracy theories so quickly and it spreads around so quickly and it's like it's scary. I mean, I don't know, but at the same time there's a lot of information germinating from there too, but who does more and what people see is always in question.
I guess the key word is media literacy.
Yeah.
Just like
it's really important.
Yeah.
Look it up. But it's hard to do, you know. We find it hard to do as reporters and journalists. So
like as a journalist also, do you feel like there's a sense of like competition also to break like news every single time? Because obviously there's so many events that are happening, so many outlets to be reporting. Do you feel that pressure also to just be, as you're putting things, obviously you have to be mindful of, as you're saying, media literacy, just trying to be mindful of what's putting out there.
There's definitely network competition. That is like that show, The Newsroom. Love that show. It's totally accurate. But there is a little bit of that, like if something breaks, we have somebody watching CNN to be like, oh, well, CNN didn't do this until like 3:08 and you did it at 3:05. So who's going to turn on? Like, I guess like that means that we beat them. I think it's important and it's really cool to know, but I'm also like, whoa, like that's the competitiveness that I see a little bit in where I work. I don't know if there's competitiveness like between individuals on reporting as much because there's so much to do. I think there is a little bit of like when we get breaking news, we do want to like really deliver the information and make sure we have a perfect script written as fast as we can and like the right elements and the right question and noticing things. That's kind of more of our thing is keeping an eye on and like noticing something to help build out that story better. Because the news is going to break, you know, that dam gets broken kind of not by us. That's like by a reporter in the field or something like that. But making sure we're building it out as much as we can and providing a really informative thing. And also there are times where we've turned to a local affiliate and like had them do the reporting because they know more and they're going to better inform. That happens a lot with shootings, that we'll talk to them and we'll be turning to them. And getting contact with those people as fast as you can is also a really valuable tool. But yeah, I think there's network competition. It's kind of crazy.
But above all else, it's like quality over
Yeah.
quantity in terms of getting it out, even if
Yeah.
it means
Yeah.
maybe being a minute or two behind.
Yeah. And there was like, sometimes we get beaten too, and we really see it. And like, the Titan submersible that week, fun week at work. Even though it was just a really crazy week at work.
Yeah.
CNN, like their coverage, what they were doing was so much more interesting. Like I just felt like I was really impressed with what they were doing. They had a different set of editorial goals. I think the space I was working in, they were like, we kind of want to do other stuff, not just talk about the submersible all day, but they beat us in ratings that week because that's what people wanted to see, I think. I think they beat us in ratings. I don't know 100%. Another time there was a shooting and it happened in Atlanta. CNN is headquartered in Atlanta. They're going to get reporters on the ground faster, you know? It sucks that when someone gets shot, that's what's in our head, but it is. That's part of the job.
Well, it's Civil War, if you saw that
I
movie.
love that
too,
movie.
yeah.
I really,
was
like,
thinking
I
about that.
came out of that movie like, this is such a cool way to portray the feeling that journalism gives you.
Because you're like, you obviously don't want these things to happen, but it's
Yeah.
just on your mind to be like, how do I get there first?
Yeah, being there for it feels really impactful. And you see in that movie the way it takes a toll on you mentally. And that is also really crazy. But yeah, I love that movie.
Yeah.
It's probably one of my favorites I've seen this year. It's not 100% accurate, obviously. And also there's like civil war happening, which we don't have quite yet. But yeah, it is definitely like there's that push and pull of like, how do we like I've said before with the war zone, how do we get the best video of the war zone? Like that feels messed up. And we use Slack. So then we're getting a Slack channel that says like Gaza war. And I'm like, whoa, that is weird. That's our Slack. And it's next to like free food 30 Rock. Like, you know,
God.
but that's how we talk, you know, it's
Yeah.
like
Right.
better to have it in that place. And it's just what it is. It's grisly stuff to deal with. I feel like it's also kind of like, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I think that in hospitals, people have that push and pull of like life and death and like their career and like doing well. And I'm like, that's crazy. That must feel weird.
So I know you've mentioned a few of the moments like that you've been going to the newsroom to recover something like wild.
Yeah.
Do you have any highlights? Like, for example, like January 6th, like you were actively working during that. Like,
Yeah.
do you have
real
any,
low point, actually.
But do you have like any, like, I guess, interesting stories from days that were like wild
Yeah.
like that you could share?
Yeah, there was a shooting in a Brooklyn subway station in Sunset Park, and I live like on the other side. I live kind of near there, probably like an Uber drive away. I was getting ready to go to work, and that shooting happened. And my boss called me, and he was like, "Can you go?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course I can go." And the next day, he was like, "It was weird that you agreed so quickly." And I was like, "What do you mean? It's fine." And we anchored all day. We were at the shooting site, figuring out where the assailant was. They ended up finding, it was that one where, I don't know if people remember this because it's very New York, but a guy fired shots in a subway station. One person was injured. A few days later, a guy at a vape shop recognized him and turned him into the police. It was like crazy.
Wow.
We were like on call with like the helicopter reporters because someone said they saw a van. Like it was really we were literally chasing down a guy, not physically chasing him, but like trying to find him. It was also the subway station that my dad gets off of to go to work. So I got a text from my dad. And he was like, "Look what happened. LOL." Okay, Dad. And I was like, "Are you okay?" He was like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine. Our building's like locked down." I was like, "Cool. I'm right outside if you want to be an eyewitness or anything, you know, like talk about it."
Yeah.
Cool.
He couldn't because the building was locked down, and I guess he wasn't like there when it happened, but it was a real like rush. And it was, you know, we were never in an unsafe situation because the assailant had already left the scene, but you know, we were chasing down city councilman to get his opinion on this, and checking out like researching crime stats and getting the crime report for my anchor to talk about it a lot. So that was really cool, a little morbid, but that's also kind of in the vein of what I've been saying. That's kind of where you run.
So you get called, you just show up, and then how do you, like, I mean, it's just like, I guess, I'm assuming you probably have like a press badge or something like that, but like, how do you, like, I just feel like you arrive and you're just kind of like asking questions. You're like, hey, you saw that?
Yeah, I think I had my laptop. It was like I had to kind of find the other producers that were there. We have people who, thankfully, because in New York, we have all our equipment we have people we can call that are going to deploy it out. You know, I spent a lot of time going into bodegas and getting makeup products for my anchor to like make sure her face is beat before she gets on. So it was a lot of, that's when you're like really doing all the like little shit, like just getting things together. Yeah. You're researching on your phone. I'm like always glued to my phone. We have like iPads that we use sometimes as well for field reporting. But you're really mobile in those moments, and you have to be really like, it's very different from when you're in an air conditioned studio and there's breaking news and you're kind of just waiting for calls to come. You're really more like running around. I think we kind of were more focused on by the time our show came on air, it was more about like just saying what happened and what we're learning now and how people are reacting. Like, what did Eric Adams say, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it was kind of crazy to be like hopping in a car, and I was like, get me as close as you can. I'll pay you whatever, you know, it's on NBC's dime. So
Right.
Yeah, that was really cool. That was probably one of my favorite days, because it was also just like, that's not something we do normally, you know?
This career that you're in right now, is this something that you saw yourself doing as a kid? Is like, I want to do this, and then thinking about it now, is this something that you want to continue to pursue?
It's definitely something I want to continue to pursue. I don't know if journalism was ever really on my vision board, honestly.
The astronaut,
no,
FBI
it was.
agent.
I did want to be a producer at a very young age.
Yeah.
But I was more like producer, like movie producer. Like I was like had a different vision, I think. But I did, you know, have young pursuit. Like I wanted to do work in the industry. Like I wanted to and I always thought of myself as producing as the thing that seemed really cool. I didn't really want to write. I've never had a super big interest in that. But I think that it falls in line. It's really the combined of a lot of things I was interested in, because I was really interested in politics. Sam and I did Model Congress. We loved it. I loved American history as a kid. I still kind of do. And I was really interested in that. I worked on campaigns and did things like that involved in local politics. I was really interested in that. So journalism is kind of where those two things meet, you know? So I think it actually is one of those things that more is like, whoa, why did I never want to do that? Because that totally adds up as something that I would be able to do. But I realized pretty early on in working that I can't have a normal job where you sit at a desk necessarily. Yeah. I was like, oh God, I cannot do a long-term project to save my life. Like it's really slow and it's not necessarily, I thought about documentary, I guess, which is kind of similar to this. But yeah, and I think now my goals are kind of really focused on getting out in the field. I would really love to do climate reporting. I think that that's a really important field that is very small and should be bigger. I'd love to do weather reporting. I would love to be chasing storms. I love when we get a reporter who's like hanging on. No, literally, I loved it. Hanging on to a beam, like with water coming down. I think that stuff is so cool. I don't think I ever want to be on air. It just adds a whole element of perception that is kind of scary. But there's so many people behind the camera making things like that happen. Yeah. Being a fixer would be really cool to me, even though that's like a really crazy job. They're the person that will like help you get a source or help you get cameras to Kyiv when it's under attack. You know, it's like they do a lot of things like that. I think that running around trying to make news happen is a really cool like place to pursue. Cool. And I do like working on like the show side of it as well. There's been a lot of shows that I've been really proud of, and the direction that we usually go in is segment producer up to you become a line producer, a senior producer, an EP, and then you're leading your own broadcast, which is also really cool. And I really admire my bosses who get to make the show every day because they're making the big decisions. And that's also a really cool thing to do, and would totally do that too.
That's awesome. I know you had like a little bit of like an unorthodox, I guess in a way, getting here in the first place. Do you have any like tips for people that are like news passionate? Any advice into joining this field?
I think having a specialist or a speciality is a really good pathway. It helps a lot because that's something that everyone on my team has a little bit of. They're like, oh, you're like the person who's really good at reporting on abortion, which sounds weird to say, but like that happens. I have a coworker who's Irish, and when the Queen died, like no one could write a better script because she knew everything. Like she knows everything about that because she's like, I grew up there and I grew up, you know, across the pond from it, but like she knows so much about it. I have another coworker who's like used to do business reporting, like used to work on the biz tech team. She knows how to do everything related to that. You know, when we get information from the Federal Reserve, most of us are like, okay, what? Like, but she knows exactly what it means. And another coworker who can read a book in a day. So she's perfect for our book segments. I know she's like so smart. They're all so smart, actually. I am shocked by the intelligence of people I work with, but not really because it makes sense. But I think that, I think delving into one thing also sets you apart in the process of getting into the industry, is being like, I have one thing. And when I interviewed at my job, my boss was really excited that I wasn't a journalism person, is what she said. She's like, you know, I think it's really great because we need people who are, you know, your skill set might still be fit what we need, but you have a different perspective. And I think that is the thing, is like branching out is just really great. Like, do you really want to be an intern and a PA forever? You don't want to do anything else, really? Like, just do a little bit of something different, and I feel like you'll learn a lot. I feel like I have that even with my friends who don't necessarily work in the same field as me, but work in entertainment. They, you know, they were an au pair for a year in Europe, or they, you know, they just did something different. I think that's like always great. And, you know, we have our whole lives to have the perfect career in entertainment that we want, and it never will be anyway. So it's definitely a benefit. Also, like, move to Washington, D.C., I guess. It's probably good. I can't do that. I don't want to. But it's an extremely lucrative place for getting into news. And it's a revolving door there, too. I feel like there's, like, just so many opportunities. So, yeah.
Nice. And then kind of like one of my, now this is kind of like a pivot now that you mentioned D.C. You're from New York. Obviously, we're all LA-based. I feel like the entertainment industry probably in New York is way different than the way that LA treats the entertainment industry. I feel like it's, you walk down the street, you throw a stone, you're hitting someone in the entertainment industry here to some shape. I don't feel that way in New York.
Yeah.
I guess I would love your perspective on like I guess news I feel like is bigger probably in New York.
Yeah.
Would you stay in New York? What is the environment kind of like entertainment wise, being a young person in entertainment?
Yeah. Yeah. I think there's a lot of opportunities there, but they're a little bit more, they're a little bit, I don't want to say boring because that's like not a good way to refer to it, but they're a little bit more like settled. I feel like we talked about this, like there's things being produced in New York, but there are things that have been there forever, like Late Night or Law and Order, things like that. So it's very legacy oriented, I feel like, as well. I think that there's a really vibrant community there. And like, I know so many people in the entertainment industry there. There's like tons of people doing weird comedy always. So things like that. But I think that, it's so like fast moving. Everything is so like fast paced that I think that it's like, I feel like it's very different from here, where I feel like there's like projects that are in development for a really long time before they like move. At least my friends that work here, like I have a friend that works at DreamWorks, and she'll work on a movie for a year before it even gets made. Like it's like just being developed for such a long time. I don't know. I think I want to stay there for now. I would love to do reporting in LA. I think it'd be really cool. I would love to do it anywhere. I would go to Ohio and report. It doesn't matter, you know, like it's always an opportunity. I've been to Iowa. It was cool. It was interesting. That's the cool thing about news, is that it is everywhere and there are opportunities. I mean, local stations are really different than here and in New York, you know, they are kind of one-man shows. Like they're really small. But I do think it's cool that I work in a place where there's also a bunch of entertainment stuff happening. You know, Kelly Clarkson tapes upstairs from where we are, which is cool. And I have a lot of friends who have bounced out of news into entertainment that way. But I don't know. I mean, it's also, there's like a whole international news place for everyone to work as well. There's like so many different opportunities.
Recession safe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There's always
yeah.
going to be TV, although I do live in fear of being laid off, like most people do. Yeah, I don't know. I think I don't know enough about working in LA to compare it, but I do think it's like, I feel like I have a really, really average, like day to day, like normal, like things change a lot, but it's like I'm doing the same kind of thing every day. And I feel like my friends in LA that work in the industry are doing a bunch of different things all the time.
I
Which
guess
is
like more
interesting.
so I feel like the environment that we're in is like almost like a bubble.
Yeah.
I just feel like I'm talking to people about like work, like entertainment related stuff. I feel like more likely than not, all my friends are entertainment than not. And I feel like, I don't know. I feel like maybe when I'm in New York, maybe it's also just because I grew
I'm
up there.
so in a bubble too, though.
Okay,
I
so
don't
maybe
know.
it is the same.
I feel like I'm in a bubble. I feel like we're talking, like they tell us like you need to read the trades, like you need to know what's going on too a little bit. We reported on Barbenheimer. That was a lead, you know, not necessarily in the same way as everyone else, but it was like, you know, we pay attention to the industry as well. And I do have friends who are out of the industry, but it does feel like there's also, I feel like even my friends that are not in the industry, there's like artsy people, so they still feel connected to it in some way. But yeah, I don't know. There's like, I feel like constantly I'm trying to meet civilians is what I call them, but I'm like, I need to know what's going on like outside of what I'm doing. I like want to know. I'm always asking people that. Sometimes they're like, stop asking me these weird questions. I was doing a really long term. I have a Republican sect of my family that I was visiting recently.
Sect.
Yeah. And I was like, you guys need to tell me who you want to be VP, like Trump's VP. I was like, I need to know like what is the feeling, because I'm not talking to people like that in New York. You know, they actually exist quite a bit, but it's like part of my job is talking to people about stuff like that. And they were like, why do you want to talk about that? And I'm like, I don't know what's going on elsewhere. Like, so it's still a bubble. Like there's a real bubble. I live in a bubble that's just Midtown Manhattan's like that big tower. And that's like a lot of my friends. And we're all talking about stupid stuff on Peacock.
Well, you kind of mentioned a promotion, but going forward, like next 10 years, where are you seeing yourself at?
God, it's so crazy to think that there are 10 more years. Like, I feel like sometimes the election stuff will make me feel like there isn't going to be a 2025, like somehow.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to at least stay in news 10 more years. We'll see about 20 more years. That might be too much, but I want to get out in the field. I think that's kind of the thing that I see myself doing. And it means that I would be pursuing kind of something away from what I'm doing, but I would love to be the kind of person that something happens and I'm the person on the plane that day going to a hurricane site or a parade or like a big event. And I'm there producing the news that's going on there. I think it would be really cool. It takes a lot of time to become that kind of person in the industry. They have to be really trusted. And you have to kind of have a lot more like visual eye for news, which I think I'm still getting my editorial legs. I'm still learning about how to report the news, but learning how to like craft the best video. It's a really visual medium, and I think that that's something that takes a lot of time to learn. And the thing is, it's also weird because I'm saying all this, but 10 years is like there's so much that will change in the news industry by then.
Yeah.
Who even knows if there will still be like cable broadcasting? I have a lot of older friends who are like, if you have any other thing you can do, like try that, like because maybe we won't have
you might
news
be a
anymore.
sommelier in
I know
10 years.
I totally well hopefully the news industry breaks me and I have to do that. I mean I might end up being reporting for our like Google Glass like news broadcast that airs on that, you know.
Yeah,
it's
that's
like
right.
scary. But if broadcast is still around, I would love to stay in broadcast. I think it's a really traditional way of reporting the news. There are a lot of other ways. I mean, there was a page assignment where you worked on a newscast that aired on Snapchat. I remember they didn't want me. They didn't pick me, but I was like, whoa, I'm never opening Snapchat, but I'm also never opening Snapchat to like read the news. Like that is not necessarily happening, but that maybe one day that will be it. And the demographic that we'll be producing news for is completely different too. So I'm also like, I spend a lot of time asking my younger coworkers, what do you guys like want to, like, how do we make the news something that we want to watch, you know? Because I didn't watch a lot of cable news before I started working on it. I still don't really, but I like want to be able to be making news for people who are my age or younger. And there'll be a lot of, everything will be so different by then, I think. That's kind of another like career advice thing I always think of is like where I see myself in 5 years, like literally won't exist because everything is going to change and the industry is changing so much. And people find it really scary, but I'm also like, a lot of stuff has changed for the better while I've been working there. And, you know, not having to come into the office every day has been a change. Like I, you know, am on like a hybrid schedule like most people are. And I'm like, that was not the case before. And it takes a lot of pressure off having 2 days where you're producing from home, things like that. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And so in 10 years time, we kind of like this being a time capsule.
Yeah.
So giving yourself a message in 10 years, what would you like to tell yourself?
I'm proud of me for making it 10 more years. That's really great. And I think when I think of me 10 years ago, I knew nothing. So I'm assuming right now that I know nothing. So I'm really happy that me in 10 years is going to have a whole new perspective on things. And so much is going to have changed in that person's life. So, you know, ignorance is bliss for right now. You know, I'm like, I don't think you know anything at 27, which is how old I am. So good on you for learning more in those 10 years is kind of the thing I would say to myself. We don't know anything. And I definitely didn't know anything at 17. I was like stupid, I'm sure. So I had to have been.
I think I feel like as we get older,
and I just poisoned my brain during college and beyond that.
You're never going to look back and be like, that was smart.
No,
you know?
yeah.
Like,
She
that's
knew
never
what she was
gonna
doing.
happen.
Yeah. I think it's one of those things I like. And all my coworkers that are older than me, I'm obsessed with them all. And I'm always like, you guys tell me advice. And they're like, your advice is that you know nothing. You don't know anything. Just live that way. It's fine. You'll learn.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's nice.
Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you
so
guys. This was so cool.
Yeah.
This is lovely.
We got to hear about a totally new kind of thing that we've not really dug into.
Quite
Yeah.
literally.
It's great. It's really interesting. And I feel like I'm talking to a lot of people who know what it is all the time, and we're using fake, stupid language. Like film people probably do that too.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm calling things saw and moss, and people are like, "What's that?" And I'm like,
saw it. You had another one that was like, oh, I like that word. Oh, evergreen.
Evergreen. Yeah, evergreen story.
I've never heard of evergreen.
Really?
Wait, what?
Well, I guess this
I
is
don't know
also
what any of
TV
these
school
things are.
because I had
I
to
know.
make a news broadcast.
I did. I
before.
told somebody recently. I was like, "Oh, I'm Reddit on that," and they were like, "What did you just say?" And I was like, "What do you mean? I'm aware."
Like Reddit?
Yeah,
What?
exactly.
I guess like someone like I said pod as referring to like production company.
Yeah.
And like someone was like, "What is that? Like your podcast?" Is like, no.
Oh, yeah, I wouldn't know that.
Oh, I would think it was podcast too.
No, it's a production company. That's like what
Okay.
people. Yeah, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
lingo.
Totally.
Yeah.
No, I'm kidding. Makes sense.
Any other lingo?
Wait, what is
Could you
sod
think
and
of-
moss?
Sot is sound on tape. Moss is man on the street. Vo is video only. Nats, when something has nats, it has natural sound. So that's something that would be like, we show the video and you're going to hear the noise in it. There's probably more.
There's like
Sig out is like when the reporter signs out and they say their name.
I'm like
On cam.
like college. This is like
Take
actually, this is a
low.
college class, like in
I
studio
skipped
college
all the
class.
journalism ones.
Swag.
What is swag?
YOLO.
I was like, yeah, totally. And there's stuff that comes up all the time too, and people are learning. I don't know. I feel like I'm still learning new words a lot of times. Someone else, I'm like, what was that? My coworker recently was like, is there any beauty video? And I was like, what is beauty video? And it's like nice, like promo footage, basically.
Yeah.
B-roll.
We use B-roll. Yeah. But B-roll's different. B-roll's like boring stuff, I guess. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. My video producer probably is like famous herself. Like she's like.
This was an Indie Not Films production, edited by Hayden Garrett, and music provided by Harrison Garrett. Do you want to leave feedback? Have an idea for our next guest? Email us, indienotfilms@gmail.com. Support us by leaving a review and rating us on anywhere you listen to podcasts.